Hello, Cancer, or Cancer Rising, or Cancer Moon, and welcome to Dharma, the 2020 Planet Wave Spring Reading. My name's Eric Francis Coppolino, recording on the 29th of April 2020 here in the time of COVID, this particularly strange time in history, though strange is interesting, and strange also often presents us with opportunities to see ourselves and the world in new ways, and we are in currently in one of those before and after moments that we're going to remember for all of our lives, and there aren't actually not that many of those kinds of experiences that we have. Right, we think things are memorable, and then it turns out that often they're just not so memorable, and they go down the river of time. And that is not where we are right now. There is a lot to say about the astrology. You are born on a sign on the cardinal cross, which has been where most of the astrology has been happening, and where much of it will continue to happen. And so I want to talk about those things, and then we're going to talk about Venus and Mars retrograde. Venus retrograde is in one kind of place in your chart associated with a kind of a hidden corner of your consciousness, and Mars retrograde later in the year in the autumn through November is in a much more obvious and visible place in your chart, and is going to have another whole other kind of effect. But the first thing I want to talk about today is something I haven't mentioned yet anywhere in the previous videos. This is now the fifth one that I'm doing. Here's your chart, by the way, your solar chart. Don't let anyone tell you that astrology done by sign is generic in any way. Not too many astrologers can read this chart. Here, by the way, is sign Cancer. And here's the first house. And so Cancer is our reference point. Remember that. Reading astrology requires a reference point, no matter what kind of astrology you're doing. The most advanced astrology, whether you're planning someone's wedding or planning an operation, or whether you're trying to figure out who exactly robbed the bank, or whether you're doing natal charts or rectification, it's all about the point of orientation. And in fact, the whole purpose, for example, of doing rectification, which is figuring out what time somebody was born, is to find that point of orientation. So in your case, here it is. Cancer is the point of orientation, first house, and let's get right up close here, close enough to kiss the microphone. See that little dot there? Or see that first degree of Cancer, notably on the Cancer solstice, also called the summer solstice. Here we've added the sun. When the sun arrives in Cancer, the first thing that happens is that there is going to be an eclipse, and that happens in a few short weeks. It happens on 6/21/20. This is an important event in your life, and it represents some kind of a turning point for you, and the turning point, the nature of the turning point may be apparent already. It may be notable in the kinds of changes that are happening in your life. It may be notable in the direction that you feel called. It may be notable in the kinds of ways you're organizing your thinking, the kinds of decisions that you're making. You are likely to be feeling its magnetism now, drawing you toward it. But what it is ultimately is a big reset. It's an opportunity to realign yourself with your idea of yourself, with your idea of your mission and your calling and what you do. And it's a pretty special moment for you. It would be less to talk about if it weren't in the first degree of Cancer. couple of important things this year happen in the first degree of their signs, and this is one of the two that occurs. And so bear that in mind, that all of this we've experiencing all year, all this astrology that's gone by, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction of January, and then the series of Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions, and then Saturn changing signs, and then at the end of the year, the conjunction, well, then Venus retrograde, Mars retrograde, and then the conjunction of the two largest planets, all represent the events of this year. But there's something about this eclipse in the first degree of your sign, no matter whether it is rising or sun, saying this is personal. I think of eclipses as being like the hand of fate coming. Imagine my hand coming from behind. I can't reach that far, guiding you in a certain direction. And guiding you into a new understanding of who you are, and it's an alignment. An eclipse is an alignment. It is the sun, the earth, and the moon, and then this unusual thing called the lunar node, all align. So it's a four-way conjunction. And it's a multidimensional event, right? Because it involves several dimensions of space and a dimension of time. And so many things converge for you around the time of your birthday. And so it is therefore crucial that you use this time to align yourself with yourself and your purpose, the perfect definition of Dharma. And the way I've always talked about eclipses when they're personal is imagine a river and a canoe going down the river. And there's rapids coming up. The rapids tend to be a narrowing of the river, sometimes a more shallow place in the river, and then there's often rocks to make it interesting, so you have something to maneuver around. Sometimes there's waterfalls that are there, and there's no looking at the fact of a canoe coming down the river and then looking at the rapids and saying what's going to happen. You accept that eventually the canoe is going to get there, but there's a lot of ways the canoe could end up on the other side. It could end up upside down. It can end up with everyone in the water. Bad things could happen, or they could collect all their stuff and get back together. Or with awareness and preparation, the canoe can go through the rapids, guided by the people in the boat. Right? It's not the boat itself doesn't really have much of a mind of its own. Some boats are better than others, but for the most part, they're all about the person who's guiding the ship. That's you. And so the thing that you want to be doing in this next 6 weeks, in this interval between, we're approximately at Beltane at the moment. I haven't mentioned this either, so let's mention this. We're approximately at Beltane. And we are soon about to be at solstice. So here's how that looks. Beltane is the middle of the sun's transit through Taurus, and then it's 45 days, 45 degrees till the sun gets to the solstice. So this cross, Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, is called the cross of the quarter days, cardinal cross, or cross of the quarter days. The sun enters each of these signs, and a season changes. At the midpoint of every season, there's a thing called the cross quarter. The cross quarters are sometimes looked at as not quite being so important as the quarter days, but in my experience, they are every bit as influential and sometimes even more influential. and so anyway, they are part of the same system, and so because there is an eclipse on the quarter day of the sun entering your sign, the events at the time of the Beltane cross quarter, May 4, 5, 6, right around there, and there's a stunning conjunction of Mercury and the sun on Beltane. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Is going to give you the ability to send sonar beams forward and feel what this is about and get a sense of the territory at that later time, only 45 degrees away, 45 days away, coming right up. So that's thing one. And remember that of all the other things that influence you this year, that is a crucial one. Now, you've already lived through one of the most difficult aspects in all of astrology, which is Saturn conjunct Pluto, and you've done so with Saturn and Pluto aligning in your very sensitive seventh house. And so these earth-shattering events are taking place in your opposite sign. So you're 1, and then the opposite sign is 7. And so 1 is you and your personal environment, as are these signs here. They represent your interior world and your concept of yourself and your astral life and your dream life and your collected history and your values and all the stuff about you, your ideas, your thoughts, and your stuff. And then this region of the chart represents the exterior world and your relationships. And so there's been this powerful conjunction. See that there's Saturn and Pluto. Saturn's the one a little bit purple, in case you're on a phone. I'll get as close as I can. And that happened on 1/12. Currently, Jupiter is making a series of conjunctions to Pluto. And we are now living through that. Jupiter's a larger, denser planet. It is the more dense planet than Saturn. I know Saturn is said to be the planet of material substance and density and all of that, and Jupiter is supposedly fluffy and light and all about expansion. It turns out Jupiter actually is the heavier of the planets. Okay, and this has occurred in your seventh house, meaning that there is a change in your relationship pattern, a shift in your relationship pattern, including the structure of your most important relationships, and a shift in your relationship to all of exterior reality, whatever that may be. This is making room for better things, for more exciting and interesting experiences in your world and in your life. Now let's talk a little bit about that before we get into the retrogrades, which relate to this. But sign Cancer, if you've listened to the previous 3 signs, I'm taking a little bit of a different approach to Cancer, focusing first on the eclipse and then on the cardinal cross, and then let's talk about Chiron. The way that the chart for Cancer is organized, Aries is the topmost planet. You can see that. That's Aries. That's house number 10. In house number 10, you've got three important things in there now. And about to have a Mars event. So that counts as 4 important things. House number 10 is about your relationship to the power structure of the world, your relationship to authority, your relationship to your reputation. It's about the calling for the work that you do. It has important, powerful associations. Excuse me. Social distancing. I'm not wearing a mask, if you noticed. Wouldn't that be boring video to see these people on TV talking into their microphone with the mask on, like they might contaminate the person watching? Anyway, you have a strong orientation on the 10th house, which is accountability, reputation, profession, relationship to power, meaning corporate and governmental power. And the reason why this relationship is so strong for you is because the sign involved is Aries. And where anyone has Aries in their chart, they tend to seek themselves. And so every other sign has Aries in a different place than you have it. And you have it in the 10th house. And for that reason, you have a strong affinity for doing things in a big way and taking on a lot of responsibility. It's a very natural thing for you to do. And the reason for that is because you seek identity through these things. And if you've never done this before, if you've never thought much about your career as an important thing for you, if you've been more of a homebody, which Cancer has the reputation in all these books here, you could look through these books for weeks, and you wouldn't find anyone saying this about the sign Cancer, that it is a crucially important sign associated with career, reputation, and achievement. And at the moment, you have Chiron up here. Chiron, see that little kind of circle and a K there? And then another planet called Salacia, which is not as well developed and not as well known, but we do need to make sure that the article on Salacia gets onto every page because it is so crucial. I did a major article right before all the coronavirus shit hit the fan. I had time to write 2 extra articles about planets in the subscriber series, and one of them was about Salacia, which I had not written about before, and I gave pretty much the top to bottom on Salacia. We'll come to that in a second. Chiron focuses power, attention, and energy wherever it goes. It also creates distinction, and and which means standing apart. Chiron confers an urgency and a necessity about standing apart. And standing apart is necessary for true leadership. Chiron is also about selfless service. And so when we talk about what your career calling is, it's going to be a place where you feel highly inclined to seek yourself, to seek your identity, to seek what matters to you, and to put yourself in an environment where you're becoming the person that you want to become. So it's the self-development element of career is very important for you. People choose careers based on all kinds of insane things, like what their parents want or what they're going to make money doing. And then maybe they can do that for a while, and then they end up booking a session with me, and we talk about it, and they make a different decision at age like 30, 40, 50, 60, or 70. You must do the thing where you get maximum self-development benefit out of it, and that is going to align with the service feature, and additionally grant you the ability to stand out and be distinctive. This is Chiron vitally involved, and all of the fire signs are about enterprise and distinction as well. And so you've got this going real strong right now. Now, and this is new, by the way. This is in the past 2 years, this has come in, and it's about to be highlighted powerfully by the retrograde of Mars. So when we get to the retrogrades, I'm going to talk about Venus first, and then we'll remember that we'll talk about Mars second. And this is one of the things that's going to highlight this. Finally, not finally, we haven't talked about Eris yet. In this 10th house, 10th house, Aries, connected to Cancer. In the solar chart, your natal chart might be different, but this is one reading of your astrology. And for anyone having their doubts, by the way, I know my solar chart very well because I write horoscopes. I've written thousands of horoscope columns for 25 years. And of course, I know my natal chart just as well. And I promise you that the natal chart and the solar chart proceed in parallel. They do not contradict each other. They just give a different, it's like looking at it one way this way and then one way this way. And you get two different viewpoints which complement each other. So in this 10th house of your solar chart is Chiron, and then there is this thing called Salacia. Salacia moves much more slowly than Chiron. There have been 3 conjunctions. They're now over. They're now done. What is not over is the connection between Salacia and Pholus here in your 7th house. These two slow movers are going to be moving at about the same speed for quite a while, and will be together for quite a while. But not skipping that for a second, the Chiron-Salacia conjunction is still happening, and so one of the things that Salacia is doing is it is insisting on a mature approach. It is insisting on a more of a New York Times approach than a New York Post approach, a more in-depth and exploratory and deep analysis rather than a superficial analysis that's kind of like designed to grab headlines. And so Salacia is saying, go for meaning, go for depth. The other thing Salacia is saying is that you must be conscious of your sexual power at all times. I don't care how old you are. If you're born under the sign Cancer or Cancer rising, you are going to be experiencing a power surge of your sexuality, and others are going to be noticing this, and you're going to be getting the attention of people, and there is nothing like power in any form to get people's attention. And Chiron is conferring that power just by its presence, so that's going to focus attention on you. But the presence of Salacia is adding to the sexual dimension of this reality, and so you need to be conscious of it, both so that you don't get in trouble, and that you are able to use this power and ability in a humane way for healing, as connected with Chiron, because the connection, the Salacia to Chiron conjunction is a connection that is insisting on using sexual power for the purposes of healing, and finally to have fun. The third instance, not the first 2 instances, the responsibility level, the depth level, the commitment to healing all precede having fun, because the fun is not going to be fun unless it aligns with your total Dharma. Your Dharma is about your mission right now. And this means that your relationships must be consistent with your mission. A lot of people don't understand this. I had to learn it, but I learned it fairly young and then relearned it a number of times. And the way that I learned it was personally having my best relationships with people with whom I work, meaning collaborators, meaning whether collaborators became lovers or lovers became collaborators, that sense of mission and passion, mishpassion, has been a thing that I've worked with since the middle of my university years, even before then. And what I have found is that any relationship that is not consistent with supporting my personal mission doesn't work in my life. And I would propose that this is a possibility for you, and if it's not a possibility that you have forever, that it's a thing that you think about now, and that you enlist the people in your life to be in full support of what you define your mission to be, and that you bring new people into your life on the basis of their being in alignment with your mission, and your sense of your mission, and they support you because you right now are your mission. To have Chiron in the 10th house in Aries means that you are the message. You are the embodiment of your mission. And speaking of embodiment, Aries has been kind of a crime scene lately of taking away our sense of personhood and our sense of being incarnated and our sense of belonging in our bodies. And so I want to suggest to you that you take as many steps as possible toward fully incarnated relationships, meaning as many in person. I know that we're in like crazy day 40 of social distancing or whatever, but that you engage with people as intimately and closely and in person as possible for the sake of eye contact. Any step along the internet toward in-person contact, including using an older technology, the telephone, when you can, is going to be very helpful. All right, we've got a few more topics to cover here. It's interesting how these videos, I'm able to present the information in so much more of a condensed way. Had this been audio, I still might be talking about the eclipse 25 minutes in. All right, so let's talk about the retrogrades first. There are two zones where the retrograde is going to happen. Interestingly, Venus retrograde takes place in Gemini between May 13 and June 25. And Mars retrograde takes place in Aries from early September to early November. Gemini is the most private angle of your chart, being the 12th place. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12. Aries is the most public place, being the 10th place. Now, the 12th can have an odd public quality. If it does, you're going to experience it. But really, the 12th is the house of things that are so private that you don't reveal them to yourself. So there's many layers of complexity and unfolding self-awareness and dualism, a two-sided story in Gemini. And the reason for the two-sided story in the 12th, meaning that on your deepest level you might be that thing and also that other seemingly opposite thing, involves Gemini. But the 12th is also in its own right a very dualistic place, a place where there is not an easy way to say, this is what it all means, this is what it's all about. And so one of the roles that the Venus retrograde in the spring is going to play is to bring you on a tour of your most intimate inner being. This tour of your most intimate inner being is likely to include a tour of your most private, inwardly focused sexuality. One of the hi Henrietta. One of the properties of the 12th from Vedic astrology is that in Vedic, the 12th is considered to be the house of the pleasures of the bed. The 12th is not an easy house for astrologers to understand. It contains all kinds of seeming contradictions. There are things that make absolutely no sense. The 12th tends to have its own internal logic, like a dream can have a very internalized logic where things make perfect sense in the dream. Oh yeah, of course, whatever it might be. Oh, someone left the cake out in the rain, and it was the cake's karma to be left out in the rain, and you understand, well, it's pouring down rain and the cake is melting away. This absolutely must happen. Oh, the frosting is washing off. Oh, wow. And then you wake up and you remember that it all made perfect sense in the dream, and then you're thinking back, what the fuck was that about? That's the 12th. The 12th has this quality of internal logic that can be embarrassing or repulsive or perfectly strange or in a world parallel. All right. So you're going to get a tour of this dream logic and of your own inner dream logic. And the beauty of it is that there's Vesta in this conjunction. And Vesta is the home fires. Vesta is the hearth. It is the kitchen. It is the city fires. It is the hob, or the stove, or the central organizing principle of the home, the city, the key of a space, is this central fire. And so the exercise of Venus retrograde is going to be seeking an understanding of your own internal, most private logic and dualism, which means the contradictions of who you are, and learning how to hold the contradictions concurrently without freaking out or feeling like you need to pick one or the other. So there's an exercise involved in this Venus retrograde involving Vesta of being able to withstand holding contradictory or seemingly contradictory thoughts at the same time. That's a good trick if you can get it down. And the way you do it is you first of all say to yourself, okay, I recognize there's a contradiction. I'm now going to try to hold these two seemingly opposing thoughts together. It's a little like the am I gay thing if you have an experience, same-sex experience with someone, right? So there isn't anybody who identifies heterosexual who then has a same-sex experience with someone, and let's imagine they like it, just to make it even more complicated. If they don't like it, they can always say, oh, I didn't like it, now I know I'm really heterosexual. But imagine you're really heterosexual and you've got an opposite-sex partner and you love your life and you love your partner and you love sex, then you have a same-sex experience with someone else and you like it. Imagine, am I gay? Well, not necessarily, but the question has meaning on a certain level. It's relevant in a certain way. And so it is in this way that you are going to hold the space of the polarity, because the juice is flowing between the poles. The juice is not at any one of the poles. The voltage is the potential difference. Okay, remember. And by the way, there is something that when you go deep into this experience, you're going to realize you have in common with everyone else. So that's one of that's sort of like the place that you've like reached the destination of the retrograde. Don't be too much of a hurry. You come out in common ground, which is where this is all heading. This one's going to probably go a little over time. Next retrograde happens in the autumn. I'm missing my cheat card. Where the heck is that thing? Come on. This is like my kind of mashup file from this. The mixed up files of Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler. Here it is. Ta-da. And I'm looking for the dates of Mars retrograde. The dates of Mars retrograde are 11/9/9 to 11/13. But Mars will be in your 10th house starting in July and going out to early January. So when Mars goes retrograde, it tends to stay in a sign for 5.5 months. That's a while, and that means that Mars is going to be in this very visible part of your chart for 5.5 months. During that time, it's going to start by making a conjunction to Chiron and Salacia, So it will be exciting, it'll be provocative, and there'll be the bell will ring on a healing mission. July 14th is the conjunction of Mars and Chiron. So there's this span of time from like July 10 out through July 20th, let's say, right around the middle of July, is when you get this time of setting the tone and the theme of the Mars retrograde that begins in early September. And as part of beginning in early September, it's going to make a conjunction to Eris, right there, very slow mover, 558-year orbit, spending 130 years in Aries, of which it is approximately done with about 95 of them. Then there's going to be another conjunction of Mars and Eris after the retrograde begins, probably in late September. And then the retrograde is going to happen. Then it'll go direct. There'll be a third conjunction to Eris before Mars moves on into Taurus and sparks up Uranus in Taurus. If you're curious about Uranus and Taurus, watch the Taurus video, because I talk a lot about Uranus and Taurus, of course, in the Taurus video. That's where I focus that. So this is all about this building process, and there's also something about your developing your public life and your sense of public responsibility, your sense of accountability to the public and responsibility to the public, and also a lot of lessons in leadership. Leadership is the 10th house. And with Chiron there, remember the most important thing about leadership is it is not what you say, it's what you do. Anybody who has kids know this. You could tell your kids whatever the fuck you want to tell them. They're going to do what you do because what you do is such a powerful teaching that it makes what you say completely irrelevant. So bear that in mind. And when people figure out that what they do is a more important example than what they say, it like changes the whole meaning on what they say and what we do. And so remember, it's all about the action you take. Chiron is demanding that you present yourself as wholly accountable. And Mars is saying this is on the level of your actions. Debbie Kempton Smith, one of those books, one of the most wonderful ones, said, of the sun in the 10th house, which who knows, you might even have that. She said, sun in the 10th house is fine, as long as you don't mind living your whole life like you're being followed around by a TV crew. That's the energy of the 10th house. That there's total accountability, that there is visibility, and that you're where the buck stops. Buck stops with you. All right. Last thought. The 8th house. I mentioned the 12th is the house of secrets that are so deep you might keep them from yourself. The 8th is the house that I sum up with Bono's very clever line. A secret is something that you tell one other person. From one of the fucking fantastic U2 albums, I forget which one it is, with Edge doing harmony vocals that are like the best U2 harmony vocals. Secret is something you tell another person. That's the house of the 8th, except that you have Aquarius and there's not one person, there's a lot of people. And so there's something here about your relationship to your secrets. And they're not very secret. And so one of the ways to live, particularly given the TV crew metaphor of the 10th house, and given how much depth you're going to be studying about yourself, is to live in a totally transparent way. The year culminates with a conjunction of, there it is, Jupiter and Saturn on 12/21/20. Almost said 12/21/12. What all those people meant when they were obsessing over 12/21/20 was they meant 12/21/12. The 2012 thing, man, the whole bookshelf, all the bookshelves full of ridiculous books and movies and and predictions and panels and all this stuff, and they were all wrong. And where do they all go? Do they have in 2013? Do they have a panel to assess all the mistaken predictions of about 2012? Well, 2020 is the year they're all happening. So on 12/21/20, Jupiter and Saturn, the two largest planets, form a conjunction in the first degree of Aquarius, your eighth house. Like many things in your chart, this is suggesting a step up for you. Additionally, it is suggestive, strongly suggestive of resources and public resources. Public resources. You seem to be about to become a steward of public resources. Much about your life is public. It would appear as if you are the beneficiary of. It's almost as if you're creating a foundation of some kind. And please be more humane and honest, sincere, and generous than many of the other foundations. A lot of work needs to get done. I don't mean this is necessarily literally a corporate foundation. What I mean is that that you are about to become the steward of. It's likely already happening, but once Jupiter gets there, this enlarges and enhances the whole thing of a massive trove of shared resources. Potentially on any level, financial is possible. Notably, sexual is possible, and you want to make sure that you are on your game with your sexual resources. Do not conduct your life in secret. Anything that you do that you think you have to keep secret, I'm playing chicken with my pencil here, to make the point, neuro-linguistic programming style, anything you have to do that you think you have to keep secret, don't do it. Do something else, or experiment with the idea of sending out a press release and saying that you are doing it, because secrecy is not your friend right now, because the bottom line is all secrets will be revealed, and all secrets are heading to be revealed when you've got Mars taking up residence in your 10th house, TV camera crew house, and making a conjunction to Chiron and Salacia and Eris. No. Transparency. Dharma equals transparency. Okay. This has been great fun. We'll see if I have energy to do one more. You'll know if I'm still wearing an orange shirt. Don't forget to check your rising sign. Check the sign of anyone of significance, and each one of these readings has something for everyone. They're all different emphasis on planets. For example, I give the biggest talk about Uranus and Taurus in the Taurus reading. That will hold true. Gemini has gotten a very detailed discussion of the Venus retrograde, so you'll understand about the dualism there. Do my best to keep it whole and comprehensive. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Kate, for doing all the editing. Bye for now.